Welcome back to Jolly Old London, where today we're going to be taking a look at some 6-shooters in Fallout London. Now, this being London and it being kind of hard to actually get guns, these are all converted weapons like the pipe weapons from Fallout 4. So we're going to take a look at the Crude Revolver and the Ferryman's Friend. This Crude Revolver actually looks pretty good in my opinion. This is just an improvement over the pipe revolver in Fallout 4, which was probably my favorite of the pipe weapons, because at least it looked like it could potentially function. This one does look like it would function, and it's normally chambered in 32, so that shouldn't be an issue. So the Crude Revolver you can find all over London. A lot of gangs have this, a lot of people carry it, a lot of settlers sell it, and it comes in all sorts of varieties, which is really nice. So the Crude Revolver, for the stats, it does 60 damage per shot, which is actually pretty high. This is with a character that's completely maxed out with all the damages, by the way. The DPS is pretty low with this. It does have a slow rate of fire since it is still a single action revolver. Rate of fire is only 7, so does not shoot very quick. Range is 179, actually pretty long range, which is good. Accuracy 63, which is decent. These only weigh 4, so they're not very heavy, and these are chambered in the 32 round, which is the most common round in Fallout London. For the pros of this weapon, it's pretty versatile, as it can actually be chambered in multiple different ways. We'll talk about that here in a second, and it is an early game weapon. Finding this early on does help out a lot. Cons of this are the slow rate of fire, and it falls off later. It's not really that great of an end game weapon for Fallout London. For a rating for the Crude Revolver, this is probably going to get a D tier. It's not really the best revolver, it's not really that great later on, but in the early game it's actually pretty decent. Let's go over the mods that I'd recommend for this. First up would be the cylinder, and the cylinder you can actually change to multiple different calibers. So this can be in 32, 45, 12 gauge, 303, and 303 calibrated. 303 is gonna be the highest amount of damage, and 12 gauge, both those two are gonna be the highest amounts of damage, depending on if you want long range or if you want short range. There is kind of ups and downs to both of those, and the main con to taking either one of those is that there is pump shotguns that are kind of better than this for a shotgun build, and there's also things like the Lee Enfield, which we talked about not too long ago. So I'd recommend 45 early on, but if you want to keep it for an end game weapon or keep it for just a general purpose, I would recommend the 12 gauge, because as a shotgun it's pretty decent. 4 shots at close range with high damage. For the barrels, there's actually a ton of different barrels. You can actually have no barrel on this, and then basically just a pepper box, which is kind of funny. Take whatever barrel you'd like. I like the bold barrel and just keeping this as a pistol shotgun. Usually I just go with the wooden pistol grip since I'm going to be using this as a pistol. Regular iron sights are perfectly fine with this. We don't need any other sights with it if you're going to use it as a shotgun. And then the suppressor is going to get you the most amount of damage if you're running this with a Mr. Sandman build. But if you're not running that, then really anything on the front of the gun is fine. You can mix and match whatever you'd like with this weapon. You can make it into a pistol shotgun like I did, or you can make it into a revolver rifle, like how it kind of works in Fallout 4. For an overall rating for the upgraded version of this, it's gonna have to go to C tier. It's decent, but still not the best. Let's talk about the Ferryman's Friend next, which you actually get from the Ferryman. He is one of the fish people that you talk to, and he gives you this revolver. Well, sort of. He actually gives this revolver to a kid, and you talk to the kid, and then the kid gives it to you. Weirdly enough, has the cylinder actually placed in front of the trigger, which is very unusual for a revolver. There are some real-life revolvers that are actually like this, though. These revolvers were generally made for competition shooting, and the main reason why it's in front is because it extends the line of sight that you have from your back sight to your front sight. So you can line up your sights a little bit easier, because the further away it is, the more accurate you can be. At least that was the plan in real life. I don't know how often the real life revolvers actually pop up, because they seem extremely rare. They also seem very expensive if you actually want to get a revolver like that. Anyway, for the game version of this one actually has pretty good stats, and it's a really good early game weapon. This one is also chambered in the 32 round, so you can use this pretty much right away, because that's going to be the most common round that you find. This one does 50 damage per shot, which is still pretty good. The DPS for this is actually decent. It's not amazing, it's kind of in the middle, but it's okay. This one has a much higher rate of fire than the previous revolver at 22, although this one does have a kind of long reload too, because you do have to swing out the cylinder, put rounds into it, and then pull back on the charger on the side of it, which is kind of funny. It's kind of a wonky little pistol. This one has 179 range as well, 61 accuracy, so not quite as accurate, but still pretty accurate, and weighs 6.7 weight. This one is kind of heavy, and this one can only really be a pistol. You can't turn this into a rifle or into a shotgun like you can the Crude Revolver. This one has its own separate mods, and this one is always going to be chambered in the 32 round, which does actually make it a pretty tempting option for the early game, since, again, most common round that you're going to find, and you may not be finding a whole bunch of bullets. For an overall rating for the Ferryman's Revolver, this one's a lot better, and I'd probably put it into C tier. It's decent for the early game. It's still going to fall off later, but pretty solid all the way around. For the mods that I'd recommend, Advanced Receiver is going to be your best receiver, just like it is in Fallout 4, sadly. So as soon as you can get that, throw that on there, because that's going to give you the most amount of damage. Barrels, I like going with the stabilizing barrel, although all the barrels look a little bit weird on this one, if I'm being honest. This gun just looks a little bit strange with the mods, but that one does give you the highest stats. For sights, I recommend iron sights. 2 of the sights on here are misaligned. I put a scope on here, and that one actually works, but 2 of the other sights, you aim, and it still seems like you're aiming with the iron sights, and the sight is up above it, and it's very, very awkward, so don't do that. Either keep the scope on there or just keep iron sights. And then for a barrel attachment, I put the complex compensator on there, which makes it so that I can just have a little bit less recoil. I was thinking that this was actually a suppressor when I first put it on. Turns out it's not. Still just as loud as it otherwise would be. And this gun's actually pretty decent. Once it's all tricked out, it's a decent little pistol to be carrying around. The Ferryman's Friend is actually a really good early weapon if you're just getting into Fallout London. So be on the lookout for that. Go do the Fisherman quest. You can actually get a decent amount of weapons from this. I think you're guaranteed like this and a flare gun, which you can also turn into a 12-gauge shotgun if you want, which is very fun. Tell me what other weapons you'd like to see covered in Fallout London. Thank you guys so very much for watching this, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye, everybody.